to clear. Comes across. Anderson gets across, and it's kept up by Skjei on the rebound for Matthews. Oh, Mr. Anderson getting some help from his defense, and he bailed himself out as well on an ill-fated clear.
He felt good about that previous clear. What a save!
Oh, Matthews out in front. Unbelievable! Matthews went between the legs. Anderson wasn't buying, and he'll make the save.
Oh, statement to a best friend twice for Anderson brings everybody to their feet.
A Great Dane is patrolling here tonight.
Wow. Fantastic stuff from Freddie Anderson. Fantastic win for the Carolina Hurricanes. And this is the Canes Corner podcast. We do this live after every Hurricanes game. If you haven't discovered it before, welcome. If you are a first-time user, thank you very much. Tell your friends. Subscribe to it. Like it. Do whatever you have to do. Gently whisper things to it to make it feel like it's an old friend. And we'll see here again after every Hurricanes game. We're a little bit later than normal than I had hoped tonight, but things went a little long, and that's okay anyway. Game didn't start at 7. We're still earlier than we normally are. We're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. If it's for the exterior of your home, you can find it at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina on Hemland Road in Durham. No place like it. Sammy Hanna and his crew do a great job, and you should check them out for all of your exterior home improvement needs. aluminumcompany.com. Going to start with some of the things in the comments section, and then we'll get into, because I always forget, and once I get too far down that road, it's hard to go back and look at it without like staring at the comments, because see, the camera's right in front of me. Never mind. All right, let's I want to get to a couple of things. First, we're going to start with the funny. Selds, and I don't know where you are, Selds, but thank you. He is here for another chocolate eclair comment. So just to provide context to this, that was about Spencer Martin being pulled off of waivers and then going 4-0-1 for the Hurricanes, including his first start in Boston where he was amazing. And so the analogy was that what I likened it to is, if you remember the Seinfeld episode when George eats a chocolate eclair that was actually in the trash, but he claimed it was laying on a napkin and didn't touch anything else. So he took a bite out of it, and Jerry called him on. Anyway, it was one of those things, just the analogy just hit. It fit. I don't really have any good ones for tonight. I really don't, at least none that come to mind right away throughout this entire conversation. I might come up with one, and wouldn't that be grand? All right, so that's Selds. Then there's two other things I want to get to, and they come off comments, but I might as well just address them here, or at least start to. One is Matthew saying that he disagreed with a comment I made in a previous podcast, in which I think he thought I was saying we shouldn't re-sign Jake Guentzel. I would never say that, especially as well as Guentzel has played. All I'm saying is that Jake Guentzel is going to free agency. Whether or not the Hurricanes sign him is whether or not they either want to, A, be the highest bidder, or B, be close enough to it that he had a good enough time here to stay. And if you win a Stanley Cup, there's a fair chance of that. But there's also a fair chance that Jake Guentzel simply going to the highest bidder, because it's professional sports and nobody should begrudge anybody who does that. So it's not a matter of choice. It's a matter of, does it fit with everything you're trying to do? And the other thing, and I'm going to save the bulk of this conversation for later, is Seth Jarvis and his financial and employment future with the Carolina Hurricanes. You can't have a bigger priority in this offseason than making sure that Seth Jarvis is a Hurricane. I mean, I don't know if you say he's a Hurricane for life. I have a fairly good connection to the conversations. And I'm not sure that the player side isn't looking for short-term versus long-term, because if Seth becomes as good as Seth can become, then the number is going to approach number 20. All right, we'll get to all of those in due time. All right, let's get to it right now. Frederick Anderson, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7 stars today. I'm not saying other guys didn't play well, and honestly, there were a number of guys that played well. I thought defensively, Carolina was excellent. Jalen Chatfield was good. Brady Skjei was good. Jacob Slavin was good. I mean, there was a bunch of guys who played really well. Jordan Staal was good. I thought the Aho line was really good, even though it didn't necessarily generate tons of chances because they were just a little bit off, and I think Toronto played a very good game defensively. I also thought they probably overpassed the puck just a touch, but they had the puck so much, and Aho was excellent. But Frederik Andersen is the reason Carolina got 2 points today. It was an easy first star, but he was the reason they got 2 points. I'm trying to think what was the game recently. Pardon me while I consult my notes. The game against Philadelphia? I believe it was the game against Philadelphia on Thursday night. I couldn't figure out how Freddie didn't get the first star, and he wasn't even one of them. Like, I get it. You win a game in overtime, you're going to send Seth Jarvis out. He's super entertaining. If we're doing it for the building, that's fine. But at least name Anderson the second star. He was the best player in the game. All right, so here are the numbers for Freddie Andersen. We'll give you basic numbers, and then we'll go a little deeper on Anderson and his 6 starts since returning. Freddie Andersen, 6 starts, 6 wins, 8 goals allowed, 154 saves on 162 shots, which translates to a .951 save percentage. .951 save percentage. First start was against Montreal. Light work. It's Montreal, even though expected goals allowed, almost 3, goals allowed, 1. Beats Calgary. Shell of their former selves. Carolina put up, 7 on the Flames. Expected goals against, 2.5. Goals allowed, 2. Probably his most pedestrian game. Florida, next. Expected goals allowed, 2. Goals allowed, zilch. Ottawa, again, Kane scored 7. Expected goals against, 3.2. Goals against, 2. Philadelphia, expected goals against, 3.44. Goals against, 2. Tonight, expected goals against, 3.27. Goals against, 1. So the expected goals, as we dig into the advanced metrics of it all, this is all from naturalstattrick.com. Expected goals for Freddie Andersen in his 6 starts is about 17.5. I think it's a shade higher, but we'll just go 17.5. That's expected goals allowed in all situations. Goals allowed, 8. I don't know what else you make of it other than Freddie has been amazing since coming back. Check this number out. And by the way, I'm going to provide the context of this in advance. Pyotr Kochetkov, since that game in Ottawa on December 12th, is first in the NHL in high danger chance save percentage. It's at about 87%. High danger chances. This is Anderson in the 6 starts. 49 out of 51. Do you want to do that math? 49 out of 51. 49 out of 50 would be 98%. High danger scoring chances. Small sample size, only 6 starts. Freddie's been great. Now let's get to the broader conversation about Anderson versus Kochetkov vis-a-vis playoffs. we could all be prisoner of the moment and say Freddie is the guy when the playoffs begin. And frankly, I don't think that would be a bad decision. I also don't think it would be a bad decision to hand the net to Pyotr Kochetkov for game one. I think we forget that Kochetkov has been amazing now basically for the better part of 4 months. It actually might even be a little bit more. Almost 4 months. So let's not lose sight of that, because I think it's important to keep that in mind. He allowed 6 goals in Washington, and not a single one could he have really done anything with. Not one. It was a freak game. Really was. Like Washington's goalie, when they pulled Kemper for Charlie Lindgren, he came in, he played great and allowed 2 goals. I thought Kochetkov was really good. It was just one of those games. And Pyotr has been dynamite. We've got 11 games. Is 11? No, 10 games left. And I do believe we are going to, I'm going to backtrack here for a second. It's possible that you could see Freddie in Pittsburgh on Tuesday. It's possible. I don't know if Kochetkov plays Tuesday in Pittsburgh, then Rod is simply going to go back and forth the rest of the way. And that's okay, because right now you've got 2 goaltenders who are both sharp, and may the best goalie win when we get to the postseason. So Kochetkov's excellent body of work is greater than Anderson, but man, Freddie, since coming back, has been special. And he was great today. No better sequence than this that happened midway through the second period. You're just not going to have a better chance if you're Matthews.
Anderson tries to clear, comes across. Anderson gets across, and it's kept up by Skjei on the rebound for Matthews. Oh, Mr. Anderson getting some help from his defense, and he bailed himself out as well on an ill-fated clear.
Yeah, he felt good about that previous clear. What a save!
Oh, Matthews out in front. Unbelievable. Matthews went between the legs. Anderson wasn't buying, and he'll make the save.
Statement to a best friend twice for Anderson brings everybody to their feet.
The Great Dane is patrolling here tonight.
Ooh, the Great Dane or has entered the Matrix. Which one do you like better for Frederick Anderson? Here's the deal. That whole sequence was initiated by an Anderson giveaway. He tries to go up the middle with the puck. It gets knocked down. I believe it was Max Domi that made the play defensively. He gets it to Austin Matthews. It was an incredible initial save. And then Matthews, from behind the goal line, tries to bank it in off Freddie, and Brady Skjei on it, kind of soccer kicks it out of harm's way. And then Toronto maintains possession again, and Matthews tried some between the legs, not being overly fancy. I think that's probably the only way he could have shot it. But Anderson was on top of that too. And that's something that should probably, kind of catch you by surprise. But Freddie was on. He was just really, really sharp and focused today. He was the reason Carolina won this one. And honestly, Carolina's been relying on 2 things a lot: their goaltenders and their penalty kill. And it's interesting, right? They snap a 5-game winning streak, losing a shootout in Washington. But the whole reason why they lose the game, or they're even in overtime, is because Washington's power play went 3 out of 6. Toronto's power play goes 0 for 4. You want to know why the Hurricanes swept the season series from the Maple Leafs for the first time in 9 years? 2015 was the last time that tremendous 2015 version of the Hurricanes. Although that was the year, I believe, that we saw Was that the year we saw Pesci and Slavin show up for the first time? I think so. Anyway, here's the... I mean, there are a lot of reasons why the Hurricanes won the season series. I think they're better than Toronto, although Toronto's excellent. That the Hurricanes went 5 out of 12 on the power play in the 3 games. Scored the power play goal tonight. The Aho goal becomes the game winner. And they stopped Toronto on all 11 of their power plays. 4 tonight. The one late in the third period was outstanding work because Toronto pulled the goalie. So they actually had a 6-on-4 man advantage for much of that. And Carolina's penalty kill, even though there have been, games here and there where they allowed 3 Friday night. They allowed 2 to Chicago out of nowhere, one of the worst power plays in the sport. And forget who else scored a power play goal that was ranked 31st on the power play. It just shows you that you just can't relax. Not that they relax, but they have an extra guy. They should have an advantage. That's why it's called a man advantage, I guess. But Carolina's penalty kill was special tonight, and part of it is because your goaltender was excellent. Really, that's the story of much of what Carolina has been able to accomplish defensively, because I think we're all in agreement that it hasn't necessarily looked the same as it did a year ago. It hasn't been the same heavy forecheck. And I think part of the reason for that, at the beginning of the season, I don't think the personnel was completely all on the same wavelength when it came to that. Michael Bunting doesn't have that in his instinctive repertoire. And I also think for a good chunk, we saw Staal playing with Martinook and Jarvis, and it's not quite the same as having Jesper Fast on that line. And we're going to talk about that as well. I mentioned this in I think I mentioned it earlier. I certainly mentioned it in the aftermath. But Teuvo Teravainen joined Staal and Martinook today because Fast is not quite ready to come back. I think when I asked Rod Brindamore before the game, he was sort of hedging. He would like Fast to come back for Pittsburgh, but I think he thinks it's more likely that we see him Thursday here against Detroit. So, but Teravainen looks pretty good there too. He's not quite he doesn't have the same, tenacity as Jarvis does in terms of the way he plays, but he's an elite defensive forward. He can certainly provide playmaking and goal scoring as the other winger on that line. And it might be a way to keep Teuvo from feeling like he's been demoted when we get to the playoffs, if Rod chooses to go that way. So I wouldn't be completely shocked if Teravainen stayed there. With all of that said, I still firmly believe that should be Jesper Fast with Staal and Martinook, and then your fourth line, and we'll kind of smoothly segue into the return of Jack Drury, who started the game on the wing, and then I think kind of gradually started taking a few more face-offs and won 4 of his 5, and I thought was pretty good tonight. Played under 10 minutes, which is, a lot less than he's been playing. But I ultimately think we get back to Jack Drury being in the middle of, again, I always want to stress this, Carolina's third scoring line. And because especially on home ice, the Staal line is going to be used as a checking line, and it should be. It absolutely should be. Look, Jordan Martinook can score goals. And even if you don't score with Staal, Martinook, and Fast, if the other team doesn't, if you have the puck the whole time, that's okay. On home ice, you're going to put them against, a pretty stout scoring line for the other team. And if you have the puck and they don't, who cares if Staal, Martinook, and Foss don't score? I mean, you don't want them to not. But if they don't, it just ain't the end of the world. You've got 3 other lines who should be pretty elite. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Teuvo Teravainen there, because he's guaranteed to play 15, 16 minutes a night, again, especially on home ice. And on the road, you can mix it up. You can throw Teravainen out there with Staal and Martinook, and you have Jesper Fast and more of a grindish fourth line with maybe Drury and Steph Nason on the other wing. I think ultimately Kotkaniemi becomes the 13th forward. Brendan Lemieux is the 14th forward. If the Hurricanes choose to bring up any younger players, if they want to bring up Max Comtois, which I guess they will when the regular season ends. He's under contract for a reason. I think they're going to, you'll probably see them bring up a bunch of these guys in the playoffs. So that's when you see, teams traveling around, or like you go to practice like, wow, why are there 27 guys out here in practice? So I think that's how it's going to look. I'm going to work my way up the line. First of all, I thought the Staal, Martinook, Teravainen line was outstanding tonight. Expected goals against was 0.02, like 0. Like no goals expected against. Not that they were super threatening. They did have a bunch of 4 high danger chances when they were on the ice. They weren't, I guess, all created by them, because it's basically what happens when you're on the ice. But they have the puck a lot, and that's just kind of the feature of their game. And again, they did not allow a high danger chance against them. The Kuznetsov, Necas, Svechnikov line, it's going to be maligned. They were on the ice for the goal, for the Toronto goal. I don't really know that it was their fault. Sometimes goals just happen. I thought it was maybe a good play by them. And then Nicholas Robertson has the puck, and it was a great shot. Robertson has goals in all 3 games for Toronto against Carolina this year. But I think that, and it's understandable, I think we're seeing a little bit of a wall here by Kuznetsov. I thought early in the game, I thought they were very good. As the game wore on, I thought they were less very good. They also played less, if you were tracking such matters. It was the lowest time on ice for Martin Necas in a long time. It was around, I think, under 13 minutes. I actually thought that Necas' game was pretty good, but I don't think the line was super effective. And when that's the case, because they're not rooted in defense, Svechnikov especially, I can certainly see why Rod played it less. As a matter of fact, really leaned on Aho, Jarvis, and Guentzel, and I would too, if you look at the numbers that those guys have put up. So last 7 games for Aho, by the way, now has a 6-game point streak, 6 goals and 6 assists in that period of time. He's plus 11 over the last 7 games. So this is the second time in the last, month and a half, 2 months, that Aho has had one of those stretches where he is 2 points a game. That's what he is over the last, basically, in this 6-game point streak, but in the last 7 games. He had his 31st goal of the season tonight. Lucky goal, but it's not like that line didn't generate tons of chances anyway. And this was a power play goal. Guentzel had an assist on the Aho goal and has points in 6 of his last 7 games, 2 goals and 10 assists. So he's got 12 points in his last 7. He's also a plus 11 in that stretch. And Seth Jarvis had his 6-game goal streak snapped. The almost empty net goal would have been the funniest of them. All he was doing was trying to backhand the puck out of the zone, which he accomplished, and it happened to get all the way down the ice and hit off the far post He banked it backhand off the left sidewall, and it made it all the way down. And if it's 2 inches further to the left, it maybe even less, maybe 1 inch further to the left, it caroms off the post and in. And the Hurricanes win it 3-1. And he has the silliest empty net goal. Svechnikov scored an empty net goal like that, right? Yeah. I think Svech scored an empty net goal, banked it off the wall. I think it was him. Anyway, that line, Jarvis had his that 6-game goal streak snap, but he still has 7 goals in his last 7 games and 8 in his last 10. So the way that trio is producing, they never come apart. And I don't think Rod will take them apart. They were a bother to Toronto in the first period, I thought. Anyway, a lot of good performances up and down the lineup, but really the big performance was Anderson. And I understand the debate. Let's wait another 10 games before we definitively decide that it's going to be Freddie. Remember, Antti Raanta started the playoffs last year. Anderson didn't show up until the end of the Islanders series. He was healthy. He was the backup. But Raanta played well, played better down the stretch, and earned the crease. Right now, it looks like Freddie's going to demand it, not vocally, but with his play. And that's okay. If Freddie continues this for another 5 starts, then Rod's going to give him the net because he'd be silly not to. And I don't think Rod Brindamore is silly in any way, shape, or form. All right. At the very beginning, we talked about Seth Jarvis. So let me just spend a couple of minutes on this, and then we'll move on. I think there's a bunch of players who are absolute priorities to re-sign in this offseason. And Seth Jarvis is first on the list. Now, what he agrees to and what the Hurricanes want him to agree to, I don't know where anything falls. But let me just point it out this way. If you're Jarvis, I think you are 100% within your rights to say, you know what, let's do a 2-year bridge and see where we are 2 years from now. And then we'll talk about an 8-year contract. Jarvis is 22. He's 22 years old. So I could totally see Jarvis waiting until he's 24 to sign the 8-year deal. Either way, there's an 8-year deal coming. Whether they get to it now or they get to it in 2 years or 3 years, it's coming. Because he's not a center, I don't think it will be what Sebastian Aho's number is, but I don't think it's going to be dramatically less. I think right now you'd have a hard time convincing their camp to settle for less than 8.5 over 8 years. I think if you're the Hurricanes, you could certainly do that. 8 times 8.5. I don't think the Hurricanes are thinking about those terms, but it's a hell of a commitment for somebody who's about to get his first 30-goal season. But I think we all agree that there's going to be more 30-goal seasons. There might even be some 40-goal seasons as he gets even a little stronger and the game slows down just a little bit more. But he is an absolute priority. I think Jalen Chatfield is an absolute priority. Now, the difference with Chatfield is that he's an older player. I mean, even though this is his, second full year in the NHL, to go to Jalen Chatfield's age here, he is about to turn 28. In May, he'll turn 28. That's not going to get an 8-year deal from the Hurricanes. But it could get a 4-year deal from the Hurricanes, or it could get a 5-year deal from the Hurricanes. But what will the number be? Chatfield's had a good year. He's got goal-scoring flair. He's an incredible skater. smart player. I mean, is he a top 4 defenseman in the NHL? I think so. I think this organization, they might not want to admit it, but I think they think so. So if Chatfield cost you $3 million a year for 4 years, 5 years, I kind of feel like that might be stealing. But he's good enough. Will he play in your top 4 next year? I think so. And then what happens when Brent Burns goes off into retirement, if he ever does retire? Next year's the last year of Brent Burns' deal. And next year's also the last year of Jacob Slavin's deal. And that contract will get done this offseason. My guess is that's going to be somewhere between 7 and 8. I don't know if that'll be the full 8 years because, like everybody else, Jacob Slavin is not necessarily super young anymore. Slavin, as a matter of fact, is about to turn 30. So I don't think that's going to be an 8-year deal. Or if it is, I've always thought that you could not care about the last 2 years of the deal, and the deal will probably decrease in money. But if it is an 8-year deal, you trust that Slavin, the type of person he is going to keep himself in great shape. He's a dynamite skater. So I could see, and he's super smart, so he's always going to be able to play well. But I think that number will probably be somewhere between 7 and 8. There's a lot of that coming. And then you have to consider trying to re-sign Guentzel. What do you do with Martin Necas if he continues to play at the level he's played since coming back from the injury? If he has a good postseason, there's a lot of really interesting decisions. And then again, regardless of what happens this offseason, they may use Necas to get some draft capital and just move on from the contract. But man, he's an electric player. It's a tough player to give up. And if you move on from him, you control his rights. He's a restricted free agent. He has arbitration rights. But if you decide to move him, you better move him to the West. I mean, there's so much potential there. And I think he desperately wants to be great. But I also think he really wants to be respected for what he is. And we'll see what he is, I think, not only the last 10 games of the regular season, but we'll see what he is in the playoffs. Because I think that determines whether or not they look at Martin Necas as somebody they have to keep. And that'll wrap it up. We have had it's a good win. Hurricanes are now 1 point behind the Rangers. New York has a game in hand. Carolina is dead even with Florida and Boston on points. I think the Hurricanes have, let me just look at the total games played. Florida has a game in hand. Carolina has a game in hand on Boston. So 97 points for the 3. Florida's got one more game left to play than does Carolina. Boston has one fewer game to play than Carolina. But it's going to be last 10 games, sprint to the finish line, and everything is right there, including the President's Trophy is right there. Colorado's got 97 points. I think Vancouver has 98. It is just absolutely crazy. The West, all the West spots are up for grabs. In my opinion, there are really 3 teams fighting for 2 spots in the East: Philly, Detroit, and Washington, fighting it over the Washington and Philadelphia fighting in the Metro, and then Washington, Philadelphia, and Detroit fighting for wild card 2. With all of that, we are done here on the Canes Corner podcast. Welcome. I welcome you to, give us a rating, give us a review, subscribe, like, do all of the things that you can do to know that it shows up in your, you get notified, whatever happens. I get notifications all the time for stuff that my son sets on notifications on YouTube. So you can do the same thing. We're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. If it's for the exterior of your home, you can find it at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina on Hamlin Road in Durham. Sammy Hanna's crew do a great job. The one thing that they cannot do, however.
This puck rolls in. Anderson tries to clear. It comes across. Anderson gets across, and it's kicked up by Skjei on the rebound for Matthews. Oh, Mr. Anderson getting some help from his defense, and he bailed himself out as well on an ill-fated clear.
Yeah, he felt good about that previous clear. What a save on another one.
Matthews out in front. Unbelievable. Matthews went between the legs. Anderson wasn't buying, and he'll make the save.
Oh, statement to a best friend twice for Anderson brings everybody to their feet.
The Great Dane is patrolling here tonight.
It was awesome. I thank you very much, and we'll see you all on Tuesday after the Canes take on and hopefully beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. So we'll see everybody then. Bye.